Hello, everyone. What is up, and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold, and I apparently just suck at life because I forgot to record and just life happens. I had another death in the family. Yeah. But if you're new here, I already mentioned I'm Liz. I talk about true crime here on this channel, and I wanted to discuss the Beauty Queen Killer. Now, who is the Beauty Queen Killer, you ask? That is Christopher Wilder, and he is a strange man. He is a strange and deranged man that was born in Sydney back on March 13th of 1945. He was one of four sons to his parents, and he almost died at birth. Actually, during the last rites, if I read this correctly about when he was a baby, during the last rites that was performed by a priest, he actually came back to life. And then around the age of 2, he would almost drown in a swimming pool. So both were very early tastes of death. And all throughout his childhood following this, he was oftentimes described as being a very sickly child. Yeah, he was not very, his health wasn't good at all. At all. He also would, the following year after drowning, he would have fits of fainting and convulsions, which could have been seizures. When he was in his adolescence and his teenage years, he would be basically a peeping Tom. And this is when his first his crimes would start, which would be in his teen years. And yeah, just not a good dude at all. His, like I just mentioned, his crimes would start very early on in life, and he would actually rape a 13-year-old girl with two other men. So they basically, yeah, gang raped her. Not nice. And this was in the freshwater quarry. Mind you, yeah, Australia. This is in Australia, but he does come to the United States, so that's why I'm talking about him. But he is a intercontinent serial killer. Yeah, because he does have some assumed victims and regular, confirmed victims. Anywho, besides the point. So, like I just mentioned, he committed that lovely crime against a 13-year-old girl with two other men. These two other men denied that they had anything to do with this and any involvement with Wilder, but Wilder would be sentenced to probation for this. And this occurred on January 4th of 1963. So yeah, he was pretty young. Very young indeed. In 1968, he did marry, but unfortunately for him, his wife left him within a week of marriage, and this was after she found out about what he liked. Yeah. He was 23 at the time. She discovered his dark tendencies that he liked, his sexual dark tendencies that he liked, and yeah, just wasn't very good at all. He also would be brought in for questioning in regards to the Manly Beach sexual assaults that were taking place. And following the divorce from his first wife, she would also talk to the police about the state and stated that Christopher tried to bed her mother and her sister as well. She also informed them that he had extremely inappropriate images of women, young women in particular, inside of his briefcase that he kept in his vehicle. And yeah, these images as well. He tried to coerce a nurse into having intercourse with him. Yeah, it was Yeah, he's a very strange man. He was also into photography, which has to do with the imagery that was found, the pictures. He would use this as a way to lure women, so he then would basically capture his victim, if that makes any sense. His ex-wife would also inform the police that Wilder tried to kill her on two different occurrences as well. So, flash forward to November of 1969. This is when he would use pornographic images as leverage in order to engage in sexual relations with a student. He would also inform the police. What? Sorry, my notes don't make any sense. Um, Oh, yeah. So any charges that were brought against him in regards to this, they were dropped. At following this, this is when he would move to Boynton Beach, Florida, which is kind of ironic because Boynton is actually a family surname of mine. Silly. This was like later on in 1969, so in December of 1969, this is when he would move to Boynton Beach, Florida, and this was following the issue with the nurse. So he basically evaded any charges, subsequent charges that could have happened in regards to this. When he came to the United States, he would live in a waterfront home that was 25 miles south of Palm Beach. He would also become extremely lucrative in real estate, and he would often travel to the Bahamas and Hawaii for work. He also would dabble more into photography, and this would mature, and the second bedroom in his home would turn into a dark room. But his criminal actions would not stop from when he was in Australia. Oh no. He would also face various charges between 1971 and 1975, and these charges would vary between rape and sexual misconduct. He would lure women to his truck with the possibility of them becoming a model and him photographing them. This would work on several occasions, but not all. He would be convicted of some crimes, but he would never serve any jail time. For some god awful reason, he would never serve any jail time, and I don't understand why, because they had all the evidence they needed in order to basically put him in jail, but they never did. Yeah. He would also be evaluated psychologically in 1977, and this is when he was deemed to be that of a mentally disordered sex offender who was recommended to be in a residential program or a structured environment and not on the streets. This was deemed by a psychiatrist. Yeah. When he was evaluated as well, he also expressed how he needed to be the dominant person and that these women were his slaves and needed to be his slaves. He also talked about his fantasies of kicking, slapping, and twisting of nipples while in the midst of intercourse. So he liked to be in a dominant type of, how do I explain this? He liked to be the dom, and he basically that kind of like overruled him mentally within the bedroom and outside of the bedroom. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, his crimes were in Australia and they were also in the United States. And this is the first multi continent killer that I have discussed, or I will be discussing. In 1982, while he was visiting his parents in Australia, he decided to propose that he take nude photos of two 15-year-old girls, which he did succeed in doing. This was after he lured them away from Manly Beach. Yeah, yeah. His bail, following this, because he was caught, his bail was posted by his parents, and he was allowed to return to Florida where he was living. So he was arrested for what he did, basically, because I forgot to mention that. And he would wait to stand trial for this, but he wouldn't stop his advances on young women. Oh no. He would also force a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old girl to perform oral sexual relations on him in Boynton Beach, Florida. These girls identified him with his mugshot. Yeah. The Australian case was delayed, and the hearing for this case would start in April of 1984. Um, yeah, yeah. But he would never go to trial for it. I'll explain why. I will explain why. So today we are going to talk about some of his victims, some of his victims we know of. The only ones we are not going to discuss today are his victims from Utah, California, and New York. So that is the kind of like the final leg before he gets caught, if you will, before his ultimate demise. So Let's just jump into this. We're going to start with his victims in Florida and Georgia. So the first one is Rosaria Teresa Gonzalez. She was known by Shari or Chari. She is listed as a murder victim of Christopher Wilder, although we have never found her remains. She does have a death date, which is February 26th of 1984, and it's believed that she died in Miami. So she was last seen working at the Miami Grand Prix racetrack. She was working there in a temporary position as a sampler. She was giving out samples of aspirin for the pharmaceutical company that she was a temporary worker for. People saw her go on break with an older man that day, and she was last seen with this older man and leaving with him around 1 p.m. She also didn't pick up her last paycheck, and her car was left near the DuPont Plaza. Her car was a 1980s Oldsmobile Cutlass, a big old boat. My sister had one for her first car. She was known to have red hair at the time and hazel eyes. The clothing that she was wearing consisted of a white shirt with the word Mejoral on it, or Mejoral on the front. She had red shorts, beige shoes, and a gray purse, plus she had her diamond ring or her diamond engagement ring on. So her case coincides with Beth Kenyon, who is the next one I'm going to be talking about, due to both of these women being in the Miss Florida Beauty contest or pageant, both of them being contestants, if you will. Christopher Wilder was known to do beauty photography, aka modeling sessions, and he was also known to race at the Miami Grand Prix racetrack as well. So Shari is believed to be his first kill or an early victim during his crime spree in the United States. Elizabeth Ann Kenyon, or Beth Kenyon, which is what she's primarily known as, she was quite younger than Wilder. She actually was known to be dating him, and she broke up with him. This split was amicable at first, but eventually it would get worse. The tensions would worsen. Beth was a model who went missing on March 5th of 1984 from Coral Gables, Florida. At around 3 p.m., she was last seen in the parking lot at her job. She worked at Coral Gables High School, where she was a special needs teacher, which is very commendable. So her roommate that she shared an apartment with didn't worry about not seeing her at first when this person arrived back at the apartment that they shared on Ives Dairy Road. The only odd thing that they noticed when they got back home is that her purse was there. That was the only strange thing. This roommate just assumed that maybe she drove to her parents' house in Pompano Beach, but they didn't really know. Her parents' house was about 30 miles up the coast. I will say there was a sighting of her at a Shell gas station in town, in which it's believed that she bought some gas for her car on March 8th. So her car is a Chrysler convertible. And when she was at the gas station, it's believed she was talking to a man in a Cadillac Eldorado. The gas station attendant at the time believed that Kenyon spoke about going to the airport following fueling up her car, and then she and the man in the Cadillac drove off together. Since the sighting, she's never been seen again. She failed to show up to work the following day, and the missing persons report would be filed on March 6th because she didn't show up to work. It wasn't like her. On March 11th, that's when her car was found. It was found at Miami International Airport, but there was no sign of her anywhere. This was 6 days after she went missing. Her family was extremely adamant that Beth wouldn't do something like this because Beth was very, like, if she went somewhere, she would tell somebody. And she was very quick to tell people that, hey, I'm going here, hey, I'm going there, not just, I'm going to stop and not tell people where I'm going, if that makes any sense. Like, I still tell my parents sometimes where I'm going because it's just something that's natural to me, or I'm going to tell my husband where I'm going because it's natural, and I want them to know just in case something happens, you know what I mean? It's just like a safety and security thing. Anywho, besides the point. So Beth, she was 23 years old at the time. She was known to be wearing a pink shirt, white shoes, white socks, and blue jeans. At the time of the disappearance, she had blonde highlights in her hair, and her hair was also brown, which could have possibly been changed after she disappeared. or would be a distinct feature of hers when she would be found, if she was found. She also was known as a former fashion model who had taken home the Orange Bowl Princess title in 1982, and she was also in the finals for the Miss Florida pageant, which is the same pageant that Shari was in. Her face was very recognizable, so if she was alive after she went missing then, it would have been easy for somebody to recognize her. And like I mentioned, she still has not been found. Teresa Ann Ferguson went missing back in March of 1984, and or Terry, as she went by. She was murdered. She was murdered by Christopher Wilder. She was 21 years old at the time when she was last seen on March 18th at the Merritt Square Mall, which is on Merritt Island. Her body was dumped in Canaveral Groves, and she was found on March 23rd. Linda Grover was 19 years old when she was abducted from the Governor's Square Mall in Tallahassee, and she was brought across state lines to Bainbridge, Georgia on the 20th of March of 1984. She was assaulted in the parking lot of the Governor's Square Mall, and then she was wrapped in a blanket and her hands were tied behind her back. Following this is when Wilder put her in the trunk of the vehicle. Wilder did this after she said no to him photographing her for modeling agencies and a potential to become a model. She would be brought to Glen Oaks Motel where he would indeed rape her. She would also become blinded when he would take out a combo of super glue and a blow dryer to her face and literally use it. I don't know if he was squirting the super glue and spraying it in her face, but somehow the combination of both, he would blind her. She would attempt to get away, but he would beat her. After this beating, she managed to flee to the bathroom and bang on the walls. This is when Christopher Wilder ended up taking all of her stuff and he fled the scene. So she indeed lived to see another day. In Texas, we have two victims. We have Terry Diane Walden and we have Suzanne Wendy Logan. So the 23-year-old Lamar University nursing student Terry Walden would be approached by Wilder on March 21st of 1984. She would decline the offer and go on her way of him basically saying, "Hey, can I photograph you?" And she just said no. But that wouldn't stop him. He would run into her 2 days later. After this meeting, he then kidnapped her, raped her, and killed her. She was stabbed to death and her body was left in a canal. Her remains were found on the 26th of March, which is 5 days after the initial run-in with her. So she ran into him on the 21st, was met again, and was murdered on the 23rd, and then she was found on the 26th. Christopher Wilder would steal her 1981 Mercury Kruger, and he left Texas to flee to Oklahoma, which is where we meet Suzanne Wendy Logan. 21-year-old Suzanne was abducted on March 25th of 1984 from the Penn Square Mall in Oklahoma City. Christopher Wilder then once he abducted her, he took her across state lines to the Interstate 35 Inn located in Newton, Kansas. This was about 180 miles away from where she was taken. And on March 26th, he took her to Junction City, Kansas, to the Milford Reservoir, where he would kill her by stabbing her repeatedly, and he dumped her remains under a cedar tree. If you haven't been able to tell, there is a pattern of time where he literally he's basically spree killing these girls. He's just doing it back to back to back to back. Because, like I mentioned previously, once you start killing somebody, your tank, the first few, it's going to keep you full for a long time. But as you progressively keep going, your tank is going to deplete. And that's what happened with him. We have 5 more victims to talk about that are directly related to Christopher Wilder. And I'm going to talk about that in the next part. And then we're also going to have a part 3 that talks about the suspected victims of Christopher Wilder, because there is a bunch. I previously talked about them before in previous video, but this whole case is very complex, and I wanted to break it into 3 parts just so you understand more of the context. So Christopher Wilder, believe it or not, with him he moved extremely fast. He had a ton of victims, and he was quick to hop between each killing. He was very fast at making time to Colebrook, New Hampshire as well. If you don't know where Colebrook is, it's basically for a 4 hour drive from where I live here in New Hampshire. And he went from literally all the states he was in. So the last one, he, he made his way all the way out to Utah and California, then went to New York, and then he ended up in New Hampshire. So you got to think he's doing all this driving all around the country. Yeah. So he did it very fast. He went from, yeah, March, and we're going into April. So this is within a span of like 4 weeks that primarily all of these murders have taken place, because it happened bang, 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 bang. And as soon as they would find like the victim before, that he had already killed his next victim. So it was literally like back to back to back to back. So on April 13th of 1984, he was stopped at Vic's Getty in Colebrook, New Hampshire, when he asked for directions. There was two stadies that actually approached him, and instantly he armed himself with his Colt Python 357. Leo Jellison, which is one of the troopers, was able to grab Wilder from behind while they were in a scuffle. There would be gunfire. Two shots were fired. One hit Wilder. Then and it went through Jellison. The second bullet hit Wilder as well. So this hit him in the chest, and he died due to the bullet. So basically it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Yeah. Among the possessions that they found on him was a book called The Collector by John Foles. And in this book, it talks about a man keeping a woman against her will in his basement until she dies. He's a very, very strange man. So the way he went out is definitely not the way that I think people wanted him to go out, because it was, and this happens every time with serial killers, literally the way they go out is not the way you think they should, because you feel that they should have a more severe death, if that makes any sense. So that, my friends, is part one of the Beauty Queen Killer, or the Beauty Killer. He also has another tag name, I'm pretty sure. The other name he also went by is David Pierce, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, he's got another funny name that he used to, the Snapshot Killer, because he's a photographer. Ooh. Um, yeah, I've got really mixed reviews on this man. Obviously, yeah, yeah, I don't know. There's also, he also when after he abducted his victims, there was different ways of he would subdue them. He obviously, we talked about, he would torture and rape them. He'd beat them before shooting, stabbing, and strangling them to death. Two or more of his victims were actually electrocuted, and this was with him using an electrical cord. Unfortunately, yeah, a makeshift electrical cord. He had no qualms. He just did what he wanted to, and his span of crimes lasted from February 26th to April 13th of 1984. It was very quick. Less than 2 months was his crime spree, but it was super fast, super quick, and to the point. Yeah. But like I said, this is part one of three about Christopher Wilder, and I'll see you in the next one.